All right, I'm good.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. I think I even have a fly-in for this, just for you. Oh, we left the playlist on there. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody? First, let's take a moment and check my audio sync. That's why we're a few minutes late here, is when we took down the other stream and brought up the new stream, the sync was completely different. Whatever I do before I start recording is not an actual sync for the stream. I need to figure out why this audio channel does not get synced through OBS to that video channel, and YouTube doesn't match them. There's some kind of time coding or something that's not getting used in there. So now that you've heard me speak at you for a moment, does it sound like I'm in sync? Thank you very much, chat. That's what I was looking for. Good. Volume is good. I look bigger than usual. Maybe my camera might just have slid down the desk a little further. I might be just sitting a little closer, so we can get a little closer to you. But I will eventually get blurry, and then that might actually be good to get blurrier as I get closer. You know, you don't want to see what's really going on up here, you know. So, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, and good tomorrow. Good tomorrow to those of you who are already in Monday. I'm sorry for that. We have a interesting agenda today. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to go, but that's why we do it live. You know how much I love that. So, the things we're going to go over today real quick, and then I'm going to bring the music down, and we'll start doing the actual format of the show. The things we're going to talk about today are the nurse that was attacked in Utah by the cop who wanted to arrest her instead of going through the proper legal channels. Xavier is starting the Nordic bidding war with Ireland. Thank you, Xavier, for the €2. No, those are pound. Wait.
No, those are euros.
No, those are euros. I'm gonna get this right. I know I'm an American, but I'm gonna get this right. So the nurse in Utah settled for $500,000, and we'll go over that and what I think about that. We'll briefly go over a few brief political stories, like the Donna Brazile admission that there was some kind of agreement. I'm definitely hearing that we need to look into all this, but there's some kind of agreement between the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign, and that there was some kind of collusion, coordination, somebody running the show who might not be the correct person to run the show. So we'll take a look at that, and I'll explain my position on that in as non-political a way as I can. Same thing with this next one, Jenna Abrams. Jenna Abrams was a Twitter account that spoke out of a lot of political issues. We'll just put it that way. It turns out it's been outed as a Russian troll, duping the mainstream media and the world. There were some people who were smuggling baseball players into the U.S. and trying to pass them off as, I believe, U.S. citizens or whatever the requirements are to get them to play. So we'll take a look at that. They were sentenced to jail for their smuggling operation. One of the bigger stories that I want to take a look at today is Google has won against Canada. A Canadian firm got an order from the Canadian Supreme Court to delist something from Google, and Google went to court in the US and got a preliminary injunction forbidding or preventing them from having to follow that order. And there seems to have been a couple defaults in that case too, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Possibly once they realized they were going to lose the preliminary injunction issue, they are going to just default. I don't know. That's for someone to research. And then the story that I came across last night when I was driving to New York City and back, I'm listening to this audio book about the history of espionage and covert operations, and there is a link to that in the description of the video, and that is an Amazon affiliate link, you know, all disclaimers and all that, but we're trying to weather the adpocalypse. But I came across a interesting story out of the German Democratic Republic, also known as East Germany, from 1950 to 1990, and I never knew the origin of the phrase "the hot seat," and I think I came across it, so we're going to talk about that a little bit too. Also, I'm going to make a book recommendation or two with that as well. So, what do you think of that? Music will be turned down. Yes, the music will be turned down. In fact, we can start that now. This is a great place to pause the music, because then I'll start it later. So, good morning, everyone. All right, where are we? Let's get Firefox working, because we know that Firefox never wants to work for us. Yep, there it is. There we go. I knew it the moment I click on it. All right. All right, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good tomorrow. I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. And one of our first stories that we want to talk about this morning is the nurse. You may remember the nurse, what's her name here? From the Salt Lake City Hospital. Crap, they don't have her nurse. They don't have her name in here. Oh, Alex. Yeah, Alex Wubbles. I knew she had a cool name. Alex Wubbles. She has settled with the hospital. Has settled with the city and the university that owns the hospital for $500,000. I'm not sure the relationship there. The city certainly may have been in charge of the police officers. I'm not sure why the hospital. Maybe the hospital just didn't want to get involved in a legal dispute because she's an employee doing her job, and this all happened during the course of her employment. So she probably has a claim there too. And so this was I guess a joint settlement or something that was worked out by her and her attorneys. And so this is more or less how the law is supposed to work out, or how we prefer it to work out. Anywhere from 80 to 95% of cases are settled before they ever get to trial, and a number of claims are settled before they ever get to even filing a case in court or anything like that. It's harder to tell what percentage of claims are brought but not brought to court. They're brought up and settled. That's hard to tell, so that it's really not a number that I can give you there. But somewhere around 80 to 95% of cases that are brought to court get settled before an actual trial. And that's very important to know, because we see a lot of cases out there, and you have to remember that's the tip. That's the literal tip of the iceberg. That is only 15% of what's actually out there is trials and things that you actually see in court. So she settled seashells by the seashore. She settled her case, and that should be the end of it. We won't get any legal precedent or any Supreme Court this or anti-police or pro-police or nothing more. It's done, and that's the whole point of the settlement, is the case/controversy. The case/controversy is over, and there'll be no more. She doesn't have to appear and do stuff that she doesn't want to. They can go on. I believe the cop was fired. Brandon, can we confirm? I think the cop was fired as well. The cop was fired, and I'm not sure what happened to the lieutenant who gave the cop the orders to do the thing that arrest her that he wasn't supposed to do. To try and give him the probable cause to arrest her. So
I can confirm the cop was fired for his actions, for his the way he behaved. Great.
And that's really how it should be. I mean, I can't think of a better resolution to this. You could drag the thing out for a long time, and trials and all that, and try to find a number for damages, or they can just make an agreement and move on.
The police officer involved was fired, and I believe the lieutenant was demoted.
The lieutenant was demoted. There we go. Okay, so great resolution to this case. So this is more of a what kind of interest might you have in this kind of story. There wasn't a ton of coverage on this, but a Florida federal judge sentenced a sports trainer to 5 years in prison and an agent to 4 years for their roles in smuggling a dozen Cuban ball players into the U.S. illegally. They made millions of dollars. This case is not about a love for the game, U.S. District Judge Williams said as she explained. It's about money, millions of dollars that was obtained in violation of the law. So the two were sentenced. They were also ordered to forfeit $112,000. So this, I would need to do a little bit more research into this case. This looks kind of interesting. So let me know in the chat and you know, Brandon and all that, if you are interested in more coverage on this story. I thought this was sort of interesting that there was a smuggling ring going on transporting Cuban ball players to the U.S. Interesting. We have another story here. I want to bring up, bringing up NPR because it's the public radio. It's about as neutral as I can find in the U.S. I guess it's possible to find more neutral, but you're going to have to advise me on that one. Where is Firefox? There we go. So this this story you may have heard in the past week was an interesting revelation. Donna Brazile, who was a temporary chairperson of the Democratic National Committee here in the United States, has admitted in a book that she released or published, not just admitted, but it's a book about the whole thing. But she has admitted that the Hillary Clinton campaign had an agreement with the Democratic National Committee as far back as 2015 to pool monies and help pay off the DNC's debt. And in the process, the Hillary Clinton campaign became quite involved with running the DNC during and before the primaries in the 2016 election. And the only reason why this is terribly controversial is there was a bunch of upset on the Bernie Sanders side of things. Bernie Sanders supporters, me included, had felt that there was some kind of unfairness in the process of holding a primary election. Now, we can debate all day whether the DNC is allowed to have that sort of favoritism or not, but at least here we have some kind of admission that the people who were on the other side, like me, who were saying something was going on, we need to look into this. Yes, something was going on, and I really think that we needed to look further into it. There was a lawsuit against the DNC and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That lawsuit was recently thrown out by the judge, claiming that it was mostly a political claim and not anything that can be adjudicated in a court of law. So maybe that in some way supports that the DNC is a private political party and can favorite whoever they want to favorite. And if that's the way it works, you know, we should just at least be transparent about that. That's my opinion there. It's not so much that, you know, I'm really upset that you guys wanted Hillary more than, you know, you wanted Bernie. I mean, okay, I wanted Bernie. I got to live with that. But if the party is going to favorite one candidate, it should just be clear. It should be transparent about that that's what they're doing, and that they aren't holding a fair primary. They aren't trying to make it a fair fight. I just think that should be transparent so that you know who you're donating your money to when they call, and who you're donating your time to when they call. You know, that's all I'm saying. I put in a lot of time for the DNC, and I really felt like it was not fairly used. It was not. I was not fighting a fair fight. So, and that's all I have to say about that. I'm not trying to start World War III on my my live stream Sunday show. Further, there's a little more news on this. Let's open this up in the right. There's a little more news on the political front. It's not that political, though. This is an interesting story. The Jenna Abrams Twitter account, which was a very famous account that had lots of very extreme political things to say. I'll stop short of going into the political stuff as I try. And of course, we're going to have it attempt to keep reloading. Great. It turns out that account is a troll Twitter account that was run by some kind of Russian efforts, whether or not those are collusion efforts or coordinated efforts of the government, or I don't know. I'm not saying any of that. The amount of Twitter activity that has been found in these sorts of efforts has been in the millions of tweets over the course of the last few years. And so, again, we should sort of all be aware. It's not like anybody can go out there and say Russians can't use Twitter and can't spread misinformation. I mean, these aren't things that are overtly illegal, and it would be kind of dangerous, and we're going to talk about why it would be kind of dangerous at the end of this. It would be kind of dangerous to make prior restraints on the freedom of speech in order to quell those voices that we don't like or that we disagree with. Instead, as Voltaire said, I may disagree with what you say, but I will defend to my death your right to say it. It is a principle of a free world and a government for and by the people that the government is transparent about what they do, and that the electorate, that the populace has the freedom of speech to criticize the government, to form views that are either controversial or critical or contrary to what the government is saying. These things all act as a check on the government's power. Again, it's supposed to be a government for the people and by the people. So it's not like the government can go and make a law or 100 that restrict the freedom of speech. So it's kind of difficult for them to say Twitter users can't say anti-government things from Russia trolls. None of that would be able to be enforced. So it's more about education. It's more about skepticism and critical thinking and education. And when you see somebody on Twitter just going extreme with their views, maybe now you have something in the back of your mind to say that you should be thinking twice about whether that is a troll account, a real person espousing a troll account, a real person who may have been influenced by a troll account. Also, do we Americans really want the Russians telling us what our values are? I think that's like the least patriotic thing I've heard of all of this, is like Americans changing their values and virtues because Russians with ulterior motives told them to. That's kind of sad, right? Anyway, enough about that. French said Alpha 2020. All right, so let's move on. That's all kind of trollish and fun anyway, but not terribly productive. The next story, I think these are pretty good ones. Let me pull up these. Let me stumble over my words for 5 minutes first. Bear with me for a second, and I'll get some documents up on the screen that I missed before we got here. Also, these pauses in between the stories are so Brandon can mark times and clip things, in case anyone's wondering.
Indeed. What do I call that last one, by the way?
We may... Though I don't know if I'm going to publish all those. Maybe I will. Chat can let me know if that was even a very interesting story to
Those
cover.
two you might edit together and publish, but for now, I don't even know what to call it.
Russian trolls on Twitter. I'll rename it later.
That's the plan. Just get...
Why are we not responding, Acrobat? Thank you. Okay, so what I have for you here are two... Nope, that's not it. Let's start that over. Brandon, mark your time.
Yep.
Reset your timer. So what I have for you here as a bit of a more substantial story this morning, Google was recently challenged in court to remove search results from its listings, from its search engine. And so I have Google's original brief in support of their position, and then I have Google's win. Nope, that's not it. Thank you. Where they won the case recently. So first, on October 26th, Google filed this, or should I say, wait, this is, no, on September 21st, in preparation for an October 26th hearing, Google filed this reply memo in support of Google's motion for preliminary injunctive relief. A reply memo would be something where they already briefed something, they already received a response, and they are now replying again. So this may not be a 100% complete reply, but it should contain enough information so that to give you the context of what we're about to read then after this. And this is Google versus Acoustic Solutions, I think is what it is. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong, but that looks like that would be somebody cleverly making the word acoustic out of those letters.
I've been looking at that word all week, and it just clicked in my head when you said that.
We sounded it out. That's what you got to do. You got to be a dork and sound it out. The Northern District of California has personal jurisdiction. The merits of Google's First Amendment and Communications Decency Act arguments are unopposed, and Mr. Angus's letter offers no legitimate grounds. Okay, so remember I said some things before about default? Actually, you might not, because when this is clipped, you won't have that. I said some things before about default, and there are some things on the docket for this case where it seems like acoustic might have defaulted. Remember, a default is a failure to respond. It's not the default judgment. Those are actually two separate things. So a default is just a failure to respond. Let's see what Google has to say about that. Google's motion for a preliminary injunction should be granted. This court has personal jurisdiction. It is undisputed that enforcement of its Canadian injunction, as it pertains to the United States, violates the First Amendment and the Communications Decency Act. Defendants did not file an opposition to Google's motion, nor answer Google's complaint. Instead, in a belated letter faxed to Google's counsel, represented to be a copy of what defendants faxed to the clerk of court, personal defendant Robert Angus explicitly declared defendants' intention not to defend against Google's suit. He expressed his personal view that Google's motion is unnecessary and unfair without citations to the legal authority of the United States or the factual record. The letter is procedurally deficient for numerous reasons, but even if treated as timely and legitimate, lacks any merit. The Canadian order is unenforceable in the U.S. It is inconsistent with the Constitution's robust protections for free speech, the immunity Congress effected through the Communications Decency Act, and principles of international comity. Given defendants' default, Google is likely to prevail. With the balance of equities and public interest strongly favoring Google, this court should issue a preliminary injunction. And spoiler alert, it did issue that preliminary injunction. I'm going to skip the personal jurisdiction arguments. The merits of Google's First Amendment and Communications Decency Act arguments are unopposed. Mr. Angus did not dispute that the Canadian order violates the First Amendment. He does not mention the First Amendment, but merely asserts without citation or authority that this action does not raise legitimate freedom of expression concerns. So it sounds like Google's motion got an opposition in the form of a letter, and the letter just said some stuff like "we disagree," but it did not raise legal argument against Google's motion or suit. As detailed in Google's opening brief, the Canadian order acoustic obtained unequivocally raises legitimate freedom of expression concerns under the First Amendment. U.S. jurisprudence instructs that the proper remedy for trade secret misappropriation on the Internet is not to enjoin innocent third-party services from reporting on the existence of publicly available information, i.e. censorship, but rather to take steps to shut down the operations of the direct infringer. It is undisputed that notwithstanding Google's compliance with the Canadian order for the past 3 years, data link sites remain active and readily accessible to the public. Mr. Angus also does not dispute that the Canadian order violates the Communications Decency Act. He does not even mention it. While Mr. Angus contends that courts must be able to act against illegal activity lest we no longer live in a world ruled by law, the only alleged illegal activity here was committed by the data link defendants in the Canadian action. No court has ruled that Google itself engaged in any illegality by including and displaying the data link websites in its search results. All Google did was legally display information provided by another information content provider, i.e. data link, according to 47 U.S.C. Section 230. The CDA thus prohibits enforcement of the Canadian order for speech within the United States. It also appears that he did not respond. And I'm going to skip this so that we can go straight to the order from the judge. So this is the same case, Google versus Acoustic Solutions, spelled EQUUSTEK, plus no step on SNEC. Order granting plaintiff's motion for preliminary injunctive relief. Plaintiff Google LLC brings this action against Acoustic Solutions, Klarma Enterprises, really? And Robert Angus, together Acoustic, to prevent enforcement of a Canadian court order requiring Google to delist search results worldwide. Google now moves for a preliminary injunction. Acoustic has not filed an opposition brief. Google's motion will be granted. In its reply brief, Google indicates that the defendant, Robert Angus, faxed a letter to Google's counsel and to the clerk of court. According to Google, this letter declared defendant's intention not to defend and argued that Google's motion is unnecessary and unfair. The letter has not been filed on the docket, and in any event, the court does not review or respond to letters or letter briefs. See Standing Order 2. Judge Davila does not review or respond to letters or letter briefs providing case information or seeking relief from the court, even if the letter is filed on the docket. As such, the court will not consider facts or arguments raised in Angus's letter. So that's important. This was basically an unopposed motion for preliminary injunction, but I think the court's still going to go into some detail. In 2011, Acoustic filed suit in Canada against a group of individual and corporate defendants associated with Datalink, a rival computer hardware distributor and seller. Acoustic alleged that Datalink had colluded with a former Acoustic engineer to incorporate Acoustic's trade secrets into Datalink's products, and that Datalink misled customers who believed they were buying Acoustic's products. In 2012, Acoustic obtained several Canadian court orders against Datalink. Datalink refused to comply and fled the country. The Canadian court issued an arrest warrant for the primary individual defendant, but he has not been apprehended. In September 2012, Acoustic asked Google to remove Datalink's websites from its search results. Google refused. However, after the Canadian court granted Acoustic's request for injunctive relief against Datalink, Google blocked more than 300 Datalink websites from appearing in its Canada-specific search results at google.ca. Google did not remove Datalink websites from search results targeted to users outside of Canada. Acoustic then sought a Canadian order requiring Google to remove Datalink websites from its global search results. On June 13, 2014, the Canadian trial court issued an order requiring Google to delist Datalink search results worldwide. The trial court later issued 9 supplemental orders directing Google to delist additional websites associated with Datalink. Google has complied with the Canadian order. Google appealed to the Canadian Court of Appeals for British Columbia, which affirmed, then to the Supreme Court of Canada, which issued an order affirming the trial court's order of June 28, 2017, or on June 28, 2017. Google filed this action on July 24, 2017, seeking a declaratory judgment that the Canadian court's order cannot be enforced in the United States and an order enjoining that enforcement. Google now moves for preliminary injunction relief. The legal standard for a preliminary injunction, the party must establish that it is likely to succeed on the merits, that it is likely to suffer irreparable harm in the absence of the relief, the preliminary relief. The balance of equities weighs in its favor. We'll get to what that means. The judge is going to go over that. And that the injunction is in the public interest. Courts in the Ninth Circuit apply a sliding scale approach in which the elements of the preliminary injunction test are balanced so that a stronger showing of one element may offset a weaker showing of another. Google argues that the Canadian order is unenforceable in the U.S. because it directly conflicts with the First Amendment, disregards the Communication Decency Act's immunity for interactive service providers, and violates principles of international comity. Likelihood of success on the merits. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act immunizes providers of interactive computer services against liability arising from content created by third parties. It states that no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. Congress enacted Section 230 in 1996 to address the threat that tort-based lawsuits pose to freedom of speech in the new and burgeoning Internet medium. Tort-based lawsuits are civil wrong lawsuits like defamation and there's a whole slew of them. They're mostly civil wrongs, like if you hit somebody with your car, you didn't intentionally hurt them, but you are civilly liable to them, and that's considered a tort under the law. Section 230 does not allow Internet users to escape accountability for publishing unlawful material. Rather, it reflects Congress's policy choice not to deter harmful online speech through the separate route of imposing liability on companies that serve as intermediaries for other parties, potentially injurious messages. To qualify for Section 230 immunity, Google must show that 1, it is a provider or user of an interactive computer service, that the information in question was provided by another information content provider, and 3, the Canadian order would hold it liable as the publisher or speaker of that information. Here, Google satisfies all 3 elements. First, there is no question that Google is a provider of an interactive computer service. The term interactive computer service means any information service system or access software provider that provides or enables computer access by multiple users to a computer server. Google is an interactive computer service, an entity that provides access by multiple users to a computer server. There is no doubt that Google qualifies as an interactive computer service. These are citing cases that Google has been involved in. And another case finding that Google is a provider of an interactive computer service. Second, data link, not Google, provides the information at issue. Google crawls third-party websites and adds them to its index. When a user queries Google's search engine, Google responds with links to relevant websites and short snippets of their contents. Google's search engine helps users discover and access content on third-party websites, but it does not provide that content within the meaning of Section 230. See the O'Crowley case, holding that Google cannot be liable for merely providing access to and reproducing allegedly defamatory text in the form of links and snippets in search engine results. Third, the Canadian order would hold Google liable as the publisher or speaker of the information on Datalink's websites. The Supreme Court of Canada ordered Google to de-index the Datalink websites from its global search results because, in the court's view, Google is the determinative player in allowing the harm to occur to Acoustic. The Ninth Circuit has held that, regardless of the underlying cause of action, a claim treats an intermediary as a publisher when it requires the intermediary to remove third-party content. And this is the Barnes v. Yahoo Inc. case. The Barnes panel held that removing content is something publishers do, and to impose liability on the basis of such conduct necessarily involves treating the liable party as a publisher of the content it failed to remove. The Canadian order treats Google as a publisher because the order would impose liability for failing to remove third-party content from its search results. So that's a little bit cryptic paragraph there. What they're saying is that the order applies to Google, and that would normally, we stop there, right? No. What happens if Google doesn't comply? Well, then Google is somehow in violation of the court order. It's somehow liable for its behavior now. It's in contempt of court or something, and it can be hauled into court for the violation. So now Google is liable. Google is damaged. Google can be injured if it does not comply. So because that level of order / compliance / remedies for non-compliance reaches that level, that means that the Canadian order treats Google as a publisher of the information and not as an intermediary. And so that means it does meet the requirements for Section 230 immunity. The court finds Google is likely to prevail on the merits of the Section 230 argument. Google is harmed because the Canadian order restricts activity that Section 230 protects. In addition, the balance of equities favors Google because the injunction would deprive it of the benefits of U.S. federal law. It is clear that it would not be equitable or in the public's interest to allow the state to violate the requirements of federal law, especially when there are no adequate remedies available. An injunction would also serve the public interest. Congress recognized that free speech on the internet would be severely restricted if websites were to face tort liability for hosting user-generated content. It responded by enacting Section 230, which grants broad immunity for online intermediaries. The Ninth Circuit said Congress wanted to encourage the unfettered and unregulated development of free speech on the internet. The internet and other interactive computer services offer a forum for true diversity of political discourse, unique opportunities for cultural development, and myriad avenues for intellectual activity. It is the policy of the United States to promote the continued development of the internet and other interactive computer services and other interactive media, and to preserve the vibrant and competitive free market that presently exists for the Internet and other interactive computer services unfettered by federal or state regulation. The Canadian order would eliminate Section 230 immunity for service providers that link to third-party websites. By forcing intermediaries to remove links to third-party material, the Canadian order undermines the policy goals of Section 230 and threatens free speech on the global Internet. Google's motion for preliminary injunctive relief is granted. It is so ordered November 2nd, Edward Davila, United States District Judge for the Northern District of California, San Jose Division. So, up yours, Canada. That's what you get for trying to take our free speech. Yeah, you take that, Canada. You can't take our free speech, even by court order. You got it? So what do you think about that? That's a very interesting case. Yeah, so this is also a great example of international law. You see how Google had to go all the way through Canadian court and comply with Canadian law in Canada, and then they had to come, when the thing came to the U.S. and there was an order against something in the U.S., then they went into U.S. court and applied U.S.ian law, and that law played out differently. It played out according to the U.S. law. It played out according to the Communications Decency Act and the principles of the First Amendment, as we would kind of expect. So Google doesn't have to delist data links websites from their search results in the US. Not that anyone really cares. This is more about the principle of Canadian courts or outside courts, international courts, being able to order something to be done in the US because of something in the US that is affecting them internationally. So that's a very interesting way that plays out, because you could definitely make the argument that the Canadians, that Acoustic is being injured by whatever's on the data link website, and that there's no practical reason why Google shouldn't delist the data link search results, other than that's not how Google's search indexes work, and that's also contrary to our principles of free speech. Certainly remove data links websites from the web, like order them to remove them or something like that, but it's not Google's job to tell us what is and isn't on the web by court order. It's Google's job to tell us what is and isn't on the web by actual practical indexing. I wouldn't want to think about a world where I have to wonder what search results have been censored out of my search results. So if I search for a controversial news story because I'm an attorney who's been hired in the case and I'm doing my research, am I going to be limited because censorship has meant that I can't research certain things? I'm thinking of the Great Firewall of China is what I'm thinking of when I'm speaking here. Yeah, so the EU has the right to be forgotten. I'm not entirely sure what exactly that is. It's something like after a certain period of time, or after a conviction is overturned, or after after you're acquitted or something, you get to petition the EU or something to remove search results for the bad stuff that you didn't get convicted of or whatever. Is that how that works? Someone can inform me of that. I am not familiar with the EU's right to be forgotten. I do remember it exists, but I am not familiar. Can I do a video about the GDPR? Are you talking about the German Democratic Republic, the one that's next? Because that's where we're going. Yeah, and it's EQUUSTEK. I mean, I give them points for creativity. What do you think, Brandon? You're muted, Brandon, by the way.
I'm sorry, I was doing a highlight. What's up?
Oh, the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. I'm literally doing the next story on the German Democratic Republic, so I thought that's what you were referring to. That's funny.
I'm sorry, did you ask
That's
me a
funny.
question? I apologize.
No. I was ragging on acoustic for spelling it EQUUSTEK.
Oh, yes, that's very.
That sounds very much like a fellow kids kind of thing to do, right? Or maybe they are kids. Maybe they are young people who are, I don't know. Okay, so there's this is a you can edit this part out, Brandon. So what is that? Is that okay? Is that ageism? If we say that it's cool for like young hip people to use misspellings and all that, but like if a older person tries to do it, it's like them trying to fit in. Is that because they're trying to fit in, or is it because we are ageist? So I'd love to hear your feedback on that. Definitely edit that part out, Brandon. Okay, and the last story of the day, because I'm absolutely fascinated by this. Let me pull up this Wikipedia page, or yeah, probably a couple of them. So in this last story, I was listening to an audiobook. I was listening to a book, and I'm really not trying to sell you this book. You're welcome to buy it. I am going to provide a link. But I was listening to an audiobook on the history of espionage and covert operations. And as we're getting towards the end of the book, as we're getting further and further into modern history, we came across the East Germany Stasi, the Ministerium für Staatssicherheit, or the Staatssicherheitsdienst. No, I cannot pronounce German, as you've discovered. It was the Ministry for State Security, the State Security Service, and it was abbreviated the Stasi. And it was the official state security service of the German Democratic Republic, also known as East Germany. What the heck is East Germany? East Germany, West Germany, North side, East side. No, this really was a thing at the end of World War II. Somebody can correct my simplified version of history, please. But in the end of World War II, you had Berlin was basically split into two, and the Russians controlled the east side, and I think our allies controlled the west side. And as I think the Russians were pulling out, there was something about building a wall, and somehow the Berlin Wall got built, literally a wall going straight through the city, and half the people lived on one side under one government, and half the people lived on the other side under a completely different government. And the government of the East was a communist government. Communism having various different forms, and we're not getting into the politics of that, but this version of communism was quite fascist, was quite oppressive, and was quite scared of falling apart for any little thing, so strict compliance with the laws was required. And the laws, of course, because this is how governments work, you can just make things illegal, right? So it was illegal to be a political dissident. It was illegal to be a separatist. It was illegal to want to leave. It was illegal to speak out against your government. It was illegal to distribute posters or pamphlets or want to go to the other side of Germany, etc., etc., etc. There were some ways that you could go from East to West Germany if you had enough money and bribed the proper officials. Some of these bribes were made official, and you could look up the value of your profession and pay a tax and leave. But if you were poor or you were unable to find or find the appropriate way to make that bribe, you were stuck in East Germany. And this was not for some short period of time. This was from 1950 to 1990, from February of 1950 to January of 1990. So how did I come across this story? Now, of course, people who know history know that this happened and all that, but there's this one element of it that I really thought was very, very interesting and wanted to cover. There is the saying, "You're in the hot seat." It's usually used when someone is under interrogation or under the spotlight, when all eyes are on you, when the pressure is on you. You're in the hot seat. It's your time to shine. It's you might say, "I'm in the hot seat right now because everybody's watching me." No, that's not quite the way it means. It's more when someone's in trouble, and everyone is waiting to see how they're going to behave next, or what they're going to say, or how the interrogation is going to play out. And so, we go through life and we use these phrases and we say things, and they're just phrases. We say these things. But I came across a story yesterday that I wanted to share. And the story was in this history of espionage and covert operations by the great courses, and I have linked to it in the description. And the author / speaker was going over the interrogation methods of the East German Stasi. And one of the things that they would do, because this was back before the internet, this was back before tracking devices, this was an era of lower technology, how they would find people and track people among many other ways. Well, let's start with some of the simple ways. They had lots of informants. They had approximately 1.5 to 2.5% of the population converted into political informants that would watch out for even the slightest disagreements with the political party, with the Communist Party, and they would report to the Stasi when they saw something. People would turn on their spouses, would turn on their children, would report their friends, their best friends for their whole lives. One person had problems their whole life with the Stasi, and it turned out that their best friend of 13 years had been reporting them to the Stasi for their own protection, they said, because the friend was protecting the dissident friend from their own inner whatevers. Very much the story of iRobot, where we try to give some control over to the robot population to take care of us, and instead they decide that in order to take care of us, they must protect us from ourselves, which means capturing us and controlling what we do. So in very much the same way, some people in East Germany convinced themselves that they were helping by informing on their neighbors when their neighbors had political disagreement, basically of any kind. We're not just talking about extreme political views or terroristic acts or anything like that. We're talking about just basic disagreements. Simply wanting to leave the country and wanting to travel somewhere else or wanting to move to West Germany was often seen as dissent and sedition itself, and was enough cause to then invade your home, literally invade your home, and search for additional evidence to hold you against your will without trial. The one book that I started to, I finished this one book on espionage and then started the book Stasiland by Anne Funder, who goes into great detail and has interviewed many first-hand sources. The one girl was a 16-year-old girl who thought it was funny to distribute some pamphlets, and she got caught and put into solitary confinement for 10 days. And when she was released, she tried to escape. and she actually made it across the border all the way to the other side before getting caught again. And then the real interrogation started, where they were absolutely infuriated that she had bypassed all their security so easily that they insisted that she had help. And they basically tortured her. Not even basically, they tortured her, unconvinced that she had just crawled across the border and made it past a dog without help. And so she ended up having to make up a story in order to be allowed relief from the torture. And then when they discovered that she had lied about the having help, they were then even more infuriated because she had embarrassed them yet again. But then, at least because they were embarrassed and they didn't want the story to become public, they then eventually released her with a reprimand or whatever, with some kind of, you've paid for your crimes. I believe she was sentenced to 1.5 years though, just for trying to escape to West Germany. That would be like me trying to leave the U.S. to go to Canada and getting sentenced to U.S. prison for it. That's a weird thought. Now, certainly, Canada might not be too happy if I just walk onto their soil without any official permission or anything. I do get that there are formalities here, but in this time, there were no formalities like that. There was actually a way to apply for permission to leave, but like I said, if you didn't have a good enough reason, then it was seen as a front for sedition or dissent or even adversity, and you were then investigated, arrested, and confined. The people of all people that were allowed to leave without trouble, it was priests. The Stasi saw the priesthood as enough of a threat and low enough value that they pretty much helped them get out of East Germany in some cases, so that they couldn't help the populace come to their senses with regards to what was going on. So, what would they do to track political dissidents like our friend who spread leaflets? Well, people have various odors and fluids and such that their body puts off just as a normal course of your skin sloughs off and you sweat a little bit and your breath smells and your hair has oils and stuff. And so what they would do, said there were several variations of this. What they would do is they'd bring someone in either for a voluntary interrogation, questioning, or they would bring you in after there was something that some incident had happened, or they had some kind of what they considered probable cause, which was almost next to nothing. You could almost basically make anything up and they would consider that probable cause. So they would bring you in and they would sit you down on a chair. And the chair was one of varied types of construction. Sometimes it was a chair that had a piece of cloth already on it, and sometimes it was a kind of metal or vinyl chair that had nothing on it whatsoever. And they would leave you on that chair for some time. Sometimes the chair itself was heated, sometimes the room was heated, sometimes it was just a hot room from lights and stuff like that. But either way, the point is that you would sweat and you would sit on that chair and your smell would get impregnated into whatever was on that chair. If it was a piece of cloth, the piece of cloth would have your scent on it. If it was a vinyl or metal or something, they would wipe it down with a clean cloth later. And then they would store this cloth in a canning jar, like a pickle jar. Sealed, basically a sealed jar, and they would label it with the subject's information, and they would put it in a room where they have vault where they had stored thousands of these scent markers. And when a young lady or young man or political dissident or just human being, just being a normal human being, would do something that they didn't like, they would do what they could to capture a scent from that object. If it was a pamphlet, you'd have an object. If an incident had happened, you'd bring a dog to try and mark on it, try and pick up a scent. And then they would bring that trained dog back to the vault and have the dog try to figure out which jar that matches the scent. I have no idea how accurate this was as far as whether a dog could really pick out your scent from one of 8,000 jars, but dogs are definitely much more able to track those sorts of things than we are, and they have often been used in the past to do that. So the Stasi would then match these things and then use that as evidence against you, to make their case that you should be confined for a very long period of time as a political dissenter, as a separatist. And then, while you were in prison, because, just being in prison for having a difference of opinion isn't bad enough. While you were in prison, you were confined with the criminal perpetrators as well, the criminal convicts as well, who had actually committed, say, violent crimes. And the political dissenters were actually so disfavored that the guards would encourage the criminal convicts to attack the political dissenters. So it was all a vehicle to further oppress the people that were opposed to this kind of regime. And I thought this was a very interesting story. So when you hear someone say the hot seat, you can think of a person sitting in an interrogation room where interrogators hoping and waiting that they put enough pressure on you that not only do they get some kind of information out of you, but also they literally capture your scent on a towel or piece of cloth or whatever, so that you can be tracked back to a residence or back to a meeting location of dissidents, or your scent can be found on a poster or whatever, something that they disagreed with. They would track you with your scent. It was a very interesting place of history. Apparently, in 1990, after the Berlin Wall fell, the demonstrators, the protesters who had finally gained victory over the Stasi, allegedly stormed the Stasi headquarters. And they were there in such numbers that the Stasi surrendered. But in some kind of weird dystopian thing, the Stasi demanded to check the identities of the protesters. And the confused protesters turned over their identities to the Stasi, who are surrendering, before they took over the building and turned it into a museum. Frankly, it's a museum. It turned into a museum rather quickly, actually. I think it was like the next year. And you can now go to the museum. I didn't think ahead to bring it up here on the screen, but you could go ahead to the Stasi Museum, what used to be the Stasi headquarters for the secret police of the German Democratic Republic of East Berlin. You can go to that museum and see their headquarters and a lot of material and such from that time. And that sounds like a really interesting trip that I think I might like to make. If you would like to hear more, I am currently exploring this research topic through I read a lot of books through Audible. I'm not trying to sell you on Audible unless you really like audiobooks. I think Audible's great. I pay $15 a month and I get an audiobook every month, so that's $15 for an audiobook. Or there's other programs where you can get them down to about $10 an audiobook if you really want. I have a link in the description for you can click on and go to Amazon, and you can purchase a copy of the book Stasiland by Anne Funder. Is that her name? Anna Funder. She interviewed a bunch of first-hand sources in East Germany who had survived the Stasi regime, and she wrote a whole book about it. So far, I'm through chapter 3 or 4. Chapter 3 really picks up. The introduction is kind of slow, and then chapter 3 really picks up. So definitely check that out if you like. Another book recommendation I'm going to make is for the Bill Browder fans, whoever's been trying to follow the Bill Browder stories I've been doing. He wrote a book, Red Notice, which is all about everything that we just talked about in the last week's story. So, very interesting. Kate, do we have a picture of the jars? Let me see if I can bring up a picture of the jars. Oh yeah, we do. Holy crap. Hang on. That's a good suggestion, Kate. Thank you very much. So, it is a real thing. These are the Stasi scent jars. How freaking crazy is that?
Jeez.
Like, it's perfectly fine technique for evidence collection and tracking and all that. There's nothing wrong with it being used to track actual criminals, but all that they did was make political dissent a crime, and then the police went after political dissenters. So, what do we think of that? I'm seeing some comparisons to the NKVD, the NSA. And some of the worst part is that you don't even know about this stuff until someone gets caught, until someone is overthrown, a regime is overturned, and then you get to discover the history from their files. Who knows what else, you know, they might have been able to destroy. There might have been even more that was hidden. I'm getting the impression though that the Stasi really thought that they were right, that they were doing the right thing. As strange and twisted as that sounds. One of the principles that I think is very important, if you have to go to this level of enforcement for an idea, there might be something wrong with the idea. You might need to investigate what's up with the idea. There's often better ways to incentivize people than by force or by threat. There's various psychological theories about this, that many people will behave better with positive reinforcement instead of negative punishment. But those things have roles in society. They have roles in reality. These are just psychological tools and terms that we use to describe when someone reinforces your positive behavior, or when something punishes your behavior in a negative way. There is also positive punishment and negative reinforcement, and these topics go on and on and on and on. You can't, yeah. The saying was the Gestapo were bone breakers, the Stasi were soul breakers. Yeah, it was very much the Gestapo were the Nazi secret police, and the Stasi were something different. They were more psychological in their efforts, and they broke you not necessarily by injuring you by force, but by confining you, by making you fear your neighbors, making you fear the government, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. By making your existence something of a burden, they were able to gain control, to maintain control. Someone in the chat says that everyone knew what they were that they were doing the wrong thing. They were just trying to line their pockets before the collapse. That's also a thing. The sad ending to this is that the Stasi, if I understand correctly, were never punished. Everything was shut down, and then the world just kind of went on, and those people who had committed those acts under the cover of official policy actually did not get punished for their actions. Germany has been punishing a lot of World War II criminals, but if I understand, the Stasi did not get punished. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was what I had read last night in my audiobook. So that's all I have today. I guess we could take a few minutes, and I could first thank the people who have been contributing to the super chat. So I see a number of you. Xavier, thank you for the €2. Tactical, thank you for the $5 Canadian. Canada can be a Nordic. Keith S, $10. PA Home State Pride. Thank you, Keith. That's really cool. He's from Pennsylvania as well. Kalfani Jenkins, $2. Remember, I'm using YouTube Red. Reminder, does it help? Yes, YouTube Red does help. Your watch minutes are what helps with YouTube Red. Xavier, €2. Please no step on Sneck. YouTube is gay, $5. If Seth Rich randomly got killed in a mugging, why was Donna Brazile afraid for her life? I think we're gonna have to read the book for that one. I hadn't read that she was afraid for her life. We'll see what that has to say. And Zizix Wolf, $2. Karl Marx City is a great documentary on Netflix. You know what? I will check that out. That should be my afternoon material to watch here. So thank you very much for all those donations. Seed, yes, the LED sign is for the $5 plus Patreon contributors. They go up there. Everyone who donates $5 plus gets put there and in the description of the video. There are also about 100 plus more of you who donate $1, $2, or more dollars who don't get recognized explicitly, and you can also join that list if you want to give more than $5 or $10 or $50 or whatever and don't want your name or your Patreon name to be displayed publicly. That's fine too. So there are lots of those supporters. We've recently been hit with the adpocalypse. I'm making all the adjustments I can to overcome this trial, but what appears to be happening is the bot demonetizes things for just about anything, even stuff that doesn't really make any sense to me. And then I have to request manual review and then wait anywhere from a few hours to a few days for the video to be remonetized. Because the bot is not doing its job properly, a lot of us creators are trying to adjust the way we release and create and title and stuff videos. You may have noticed that there was no chat on today's stream because I'm afraid that anything that gets sent through chat could be optically character recognized on the stream by the bot, and then if someone says a naughty word or something that triggers the bot in chat, then it gets put on my video in perpetuity into a few frames or more, and then the bot can demonetize me that way. So we actually lost monetization on every single video we did last week, and what we ended up having to do was clip those videos out. They got demonetized, and then we requested manual review. We left them in private until they were remonetized by YouTube. Because we have over 10,000 subscribers, they get reviewed even if they're set to private, and that's unfair to anyone who has less than 10,000 subscribers. YouTube's response is that there's 400 hours of video uploaded every minute, and that it is simply physically impossible to review all of it. So I get that, but at the same time, it's your policy to implement this bot. So maybe go, tone it down to 65% instead of 100% or something with the bot, because you're nabbing my channel as well. And obviously, we're not doing anything outside of YouTube's ad-friendly policies. Hey, Matt, thanks for the $5. Very informative as always. I really appreciate that. Any other thoughts, questions? Brandon, how about questions as we end the stream here?
Can you check Discord really quick?
I did. I totally forgot to check that earlier, and I did not run an ad insertion. I don't know that we need to run an ad insertion here at the end of the stream.
Agreed.
That's fine. I'm not too worried about it. This morning's stream wasn't as smooth as last week's, but I also the stories that I put together were a little bit weirder.
I do have some questions.
Do we
for
have
you.
any questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
Just double checking some of them. Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Elisa, aka Vampfae, says she's a small creator with less than 50 subs. The overall consensus of smaller creators is that YouTube isn't supporting them as much, and it seems like they're trying to discourage them. And so, what her question is, after changing the criteria for the monetization of small channels, what do you think about their attitude towards small creators, and what do you think about how difficult they're making it for people who are just starting off on YouTube?
That's frankly also my concern. So the cutoff seems to have been that 10,000 subscriber number, but they've used that number before. And at first I was really concerned that I was going to be much more affected by it, and I've literally had some sleepless nights because I was afraid that I would have to adjust everything, move to Twitch and all that. And we are going to do all of that. We are actually going to expand to Twitch and try to upload some of these video archives as well as the new videos and stuff to Twitch. And we'll be exploring other platforms as well. But as far as the unfairness to smaller creators, it is absolutely creating a barrier to entry. If you create good content, the idea of the platform was basically a more democratic video provider, more user-generated content, and everybody's got a chance, and if you work hard. But at the same time, YouTube wants to survive and make money themselves, and the adpocalypse has taken away a significant amount of their ability to survive. So it's a really tough situation. What I really don't appreciate from YouTube is the lack of transparency to the creators. If they're going to make a bot that demonetizes, build into that bot to tell us the reasons why. I understand it's an AI. There's still ways to read the state of an AI. We all watched IBM's Watson. It's an AI. It does kind of a voting thing and figures out what is the best answer based on the context of the question. It's a very specialized AI, and it definitely was programmed to give feedback. There is no reason why YouTube could not have programmed their bot to give feedback. So this is where they discredit themselves and where my concern comes in. Because if they aren't giving feedback, is it because they're dumb or is it because they're withholding something from us? I don't think YouTube and Google are dumb. I'm going to start there and say that they should come out and admit that they're dumb if they're dumb, because nobody's going to believe them otherwise. If they really can't tell why things get demonetized, they need to say that. I don't think that that's the truth. I think they can tell why things get demonetized and they aren't sharing it with us. A few months ago, I went to renew my car insurance, which happens automatically, but they sent me a letter saying that my car insurance was going up by $600 a year, even though I haven't had any accidents or incidents or tickets or anything. So I got very vocal on Twitter, and I ended up having to leave my car insurance company. And a number of people wrote to me and confirmed something I already thought, but just reminded me that sometimes people do those things as a discouragement, like you said in your question. That it isn't meant to be a, here, jump through these hoops and everything will be fine. It's meant to be a, here's some really hard hoops that you shouldn't be able to jump through, but we'd look bad if we just kicked you out of our organization, so we're just going to make it difficult and miserable for you to join us and exist here. And this happens in real life all the time. This happens in social clubs, in social circles. If you're not welcome someplace, you're going to leave. And so they just act less and less welcoming to you. You may have been in a personal relationship with a spouse or lover or someone who slowly or suddenly started acting colder and colder to you until you went away or figured it out or whatever, because they lacked the courtesy or the ability to break up with you. This is also a concern that YouTube could be doing this. YouTube could be saying, we don't want this influx of young, creative, innovative people, or this or we just don't want an influx of new, unbudgeted, unfunded, content that people are trying to create, or that we don't want to have to bother with it until you reach a certain size and following. And so they're just not going to help you with monetization until you reach 10,000 subscribers, and even then, they're not going to go out of their way to tell you what you're doing wrong when you get demonetized without any clear reason. If I had gone onto a stream and started cursing, or if I had shown some sexual content, or if I was doing a news story on the latest terrorist attack, I could understand demonetization. What I don't understand is demonetization when you're doing everything you can to comply with the guidelines. And so a lot of people, including me, are getting very frustrated that we're complying with the guidelines, we're bending over backwards, we're relying on YouTube's statements that we won't get demonetized for complying with the guidelines, and then 7 out of 7 videos get demonetized for not complying with the guidelines, yet YouTube can't tell me what I was doing to not comply with the guidelines. So good luck figuring out what YouTube's doing. It could just be that YouTube is dumb in another way. Maybe they just think that they can put their head in their shell, or their head in the sand, or just keep their head down and weather this storm, and they'll come out on the other side maybe a little damaged, but not a lot damaged. Whereas if they open up their mouth and say, we're going to do this, they might piss off their advertisers. If they open up, we're going to do that, they might piss off their creators. So I think they're just trying to toe the line and weather the storm. But there is a concern in there that they could be really taking advantage of us, and hoping that some of us are too dumb to move on, and that and too dumb to read into their behavior. If I had a personal relationship with someone, and I said, here are the things you need to do to be my girlfriend, and then you tried to literally follow those, and then I was like, no, you're not doing anything right. What's wrong with you? And then you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? And I won't tell you. I'll just keep telling you, no, if you want to be my girlfriend, you've got to be nice to me, and you've got to this, and this. And then I turn around and say, no, you violated it again. Okay, what did I do? Oh, no, you've got to be nice to me, and you've got to this, and you've got to that. Okay, but which one of those did I do? Or what was, this is the worst relationship. This would be a dysfunctional, downright borderline abusive relationship if this was a personal relationship between people. And YouTube is trying to toe the line like this is an okay, normal thing to do. I disagree. I would not run my own system this way. I don't think this is helpful to anyone. We're wasting a bunch of time on it. So I really would like to get back to making videos and worrying about, whether my video is going to be a good video or a bad video, a viral video or a go nowhere video, and not whether or not YouTube is going to take a good video that's going viral and demonetize it right as it's reaching virality or something. That's really just why? So the only solution that I've been presented with isn't a solution. It's a workaround, it's a band-aid, and it's to upload videos as private, let them get demonetized, and then release them once they're remonetized. So we're going to try that this week, and I'm going to ask you for feedback. I want to know how much you like or hate whatever we're going to do. The plan is when I stop this stream is going to go private, and no one's going to get to watch this stream until YouTube confirms that it's properly monetized. Meanwhile, Brandon's been clipping out a bunch of these videos, these clips, these stories here, and those are going to be marked private and scheduled for release throughout the week. And we're also going to do some recorded videos this week that I'm working on. The new Sensei video will be the first one of those that's almost done, and it will be released very shortly. It was supposed to be yesterday, but I got an invitation to New York yesterday that I ended up taking. So I went to New York, and I did not finish New Sensei. I'm so sorry. It will be out this week, probably no later than Thursday, because don't forget I've got the Imagos case on Tuesday, and everything. So thank you, Zizix, for the $5. Sent me something on Discord. Feels that YouTube has become a black box. Yes, there we go. I'll take it one step further. A black body. Stuff goes in and stuff doesn't come out. A black box neural net AI that they can only train by people flagging for review. Yeah, that's about it. But who programs a black box AI that even they don't have view into? That doesn't make any sense. It sounds like they're either intentionally doing an experiment, which is just, that's fine. I wish they would just tell us that. The other thing that I'm concerned about is Heisenberg, basically. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'm concerned about us skewing the results. I am changing my behavior somewhat drastically to accommodate the bot, but the bot is changing its behavior to accommodate me. So we're going to normalize somewhere off of the center of the bell curve, not at the appropriate normal spot. We're going to normalize to like something else. I don't even know the mathematics to figure that out. And someone could tell me what that's a problem, right? If your AI is skewed, is biased, it's already broken. So we're going to skew to whatever the new normal thing is, whatever the new interpretation of YouTube's bot is. The bot is going to think that that's the ad-friendly guidelines.
You're trying to meet the bot in the middle, but the bot should be meeting you at the finish line.
Exactly. Because the bot isn't meeting us at the finish line, we're desperately trying to adjust to figure out how to accommodate the bot. And you're right, we're going to be meeting the bot in the middle when the bot should be meeting us at the end.
I do have a few more questions if you want to go over those.
Yes, definitely.
In terms of the Google v. Canada case, would there be a case made that Google is aiding and abetting data link by not delisting the links?
That's the case. That's the whole case right there. Basically, is that Google is not is somehow causing the harm by hosting the search engine results. So it's not that Google is guilty of a criminal violation, because as we all know, corporations aren't people and can't be arrested, but they are people and can contribute to political campaigns. The corporation isn't really committing a crime so much as it's liable for the damage that it's causing, but that, quote unquote, it's allegedly causing by hosting the search engine results. So what the Canadian court order said was that Google has to delist those search results worldwide or face liability for that. And the American court order says, no can do. We have a law that says that Google is only an intermediary and is not liable for the content that is indexed on its search engine. Because of that, Google exists. If we didn't have that law, Google would have a lot harder of a time existing. So would search engines in general, because that's how you index things, is by capturing some of the information that was indexed. That's necessary. It's by definition. How else do you index something unless you find out about it first and then categorize it by using some of the same words and phrases and pictures and such? So it's meant to be an index, not a copy. And the law recognizes that. So although I'm sure Canadian law also recognizes something like that to an extent, Canadian law did not think that was a bar to having things delisted from Google, whereas American law did.
That question, by the way, was from Yarbar, which, if I haven't mentioned in the past, is a beautiful username.
Yarbar. Next
question comes from Tomaref. Tomaref? Is there any good resources to get started about learning about international law? Do you need to focus on specific countries with specific enforcement agreements?
Yeah, you're not going to just do international law. Usually, you're going to find a niche: international finance law, international intellectual property law, international trademark or patent or copyright law, international criminal law. You're going to, and there's no. It's not like there's one place where you do international law. It's any law that crosses national boundaries. So you might specialize in U.S. China international trade relations or something. You might specialize in trademark in the EU. These are things like that you would need to then study. And how you would study them is not only by studying the law of the two countries that you're interested in with regards to the niche that you're trying to get to, but you would also then need to find the way that those international things are adjudicated. You need to learn what the international rules of procedure are for those countries and how they interact and who adjudicates those and how. Is it in the European Court of Justice? Is it in one of the country's highest courts? Is it adjudicated as a local issue and then brought up to a higher court on appeal? This differs from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So usually to start studying international law, you first start studying base law, and assuming that you have some kind of basic legal education, then you might start with a secondary source, like a book on international law, like a treatise on international law. There are some of the regular old law books, I could probably sell you mine, that go over international law the regular way by just talking about it in subjects and giving you cases to read and then exercises to do. So it's a very complicated topic. I don't think there's any one lawyer that knows, quote unquote, all of international law. So it's very niche. Russia, America, trade relations is probably something you could do as an entire career. And if you can speak the language, of course, that would also really help, because so many Americans do not speak anything other than English, including myself. I can order dos tequilas, por favor, con limas con sal, but I cannot ask ¿Dónde está los baños? There you go. That's the extent of my Spanish.
Did you just say 2 tequilas with salt on the rim?
Yes.
Nice.
That's the extent of my Spanish. I'm sorry.
Amazing. Michelle and Craig asks, Google versus acoustic. How does Google know when laws in countries apply to them, and what courts have jurisdiction to tell Google what to do?
That's you have to know that. So that's your job as a citizen of the world, to understand what jurisdiction you're in and know the local laws. Google is an international company. They do business in many, many, many countries, and so they have to know the law of each country very well, and they have to comply with it. For example, in China, Google complies with the Great Firewall of China and has to censor search results from their Chinese search databases, their Chinese indexes. Or rather, should I say, their indexes that are served to China have to be filtered through a filter that is provided by the government of China. Just to tie it all the way back, the Chinese government is also communist, but a different kind of communism that doesn't seem to be as oppressive as some that we have seen. So, again, this is an important point, because there are degrees on a spectrum of various kinds of government. And so we can't just say no socialism, or no capitalism, or no anarchism, or no fascism, or no. A lot of these things are something you don't want to take to extremes. But communism is sort of an expression of the German Karl Marx's ideas about a futuristic society where we had enough stuff that we could all take care of each other and no one would really have to suffer, and everybody could provide what they could provide and could take what they needed. It's a little bit utopian, isn't it? I get it. Unfortunately, some governments, some people basically have taken these ideas and tried to force them, taken them way out to extremes. And we see that expressed in the last 100 years or so of history. China is one of the remaining examples of communism that seem to be sustainable. And I'll leave it at that. I don't know what to say about. I don't know Chinese history or Chinese politics in any way. I don't want to go too far there. I am seeing some chat saying that the Chinese party is more oppressive than Stalinism. I don't know. I'm just passing that along. Maybe that's another good audiobook. Maybe next week you'll see me recommending an audiobook on Chinese communism and Chinese politics.
The Lawful Book Club.
The Lawful Book Club. Yeah, we're definitely going to do that. We'll be talking more and more about books and things. I have upped my Audible membership to the $23 a month level, where I get 2 audiobooks. I'm really not trying to sell you Audible, and well, see, I'm happy to have you buy books using my link. I'm not interested in pushing it on you. Like just to make money. I am applying for doing sponsorships and things, so there may be a segment eventually where I do actually sell you Audible, but we're going to be trying to do that very tastefully and really only as a response to the adpocalypse, because our revenue is cut fairly significantly, and when the revenue is at a stable, sustainable level, the channel continues and everything's great. When the revenue is fluctuating, I get worried, and then when the revenue drops to nothing, I have to be very careful, or I'm not going to have money to pay my bills, and then my credit gets hit, and then really a whole snowballs thing happens if I don't have any money. So the fact that the Patreon supporters have been so awesome is so awesome. You guys are consistent and stable and growing, and is really great. I added you all to the panel scrolling behind me this morning. You may have noticed I also added someone else to that panel, and I would like to take a moment to thank Mr. Arduino Evil, otherwise known as AVE, who has sponsored a video on the Milwaukee versus Snap-on Tools patent case. And I'll be releasing that video probably in a week or two. I'll probably drop it the week of Thanksgiving. It's very complicated. It's patent. It's Milwaukee Tool claiming that they own, and winning the claim that they own the patent on lithium-ion tool batteries from many years ago. When they first started appearing on the market, lithium-ion tool batteries had a much higher discharge rate than nickel-cadmium batteries did, and even many nickel-metal hydride batteries. You may notice that I have a whole stack of of lithium-ion batteries, 18650s, stacked behind me there. I use those for various projects and things. One of the things I want to make are various UPSs and batteries and power supplies for the work that I do here. And sometime next summer, I don't think I can afford to wait till next summer on my battery, but my car needs a new battery as well, and I'm trying to figure out how hard it is to build a lithium-ion car battery. It can't be that hard as long as you've got the right set of power diodes there, so you don't suck the juice out of the alternator too quickly. That would blow up your alternator, and then when you're going to power the car, you obviously need to connect the lithium-ion battery directly to the battery. So there has to be some kind of power transistor or diode set in there so you don't feed the power from the battery back into the lithium ions. Because anybody who knows lithium ions knows those things can suck the juice out of anything as basically quickly as chemically possible, which is very fast. Fast enough to overheat and blow up, which is what happens when those circuits fail or those batteries get pierced or whatever. So it's very important that you don't over-discharge or overcharge, current-wise or voltage-wise, your lithium-ion batteries, because that's exactly what happens. You can literally buy LiPo UPS systems, that's correct, and you can also buy the circuitry that controls charging and discharging, called battery management systems. And so you can build your own batteries by buying battery management system boards and then wiring them up to the battery packs. I recently made my own battery pack for an e-bike, 20S 4P battery pack I made for an e-bike, and it runs great. Using all recycled laptop batteries that I got for only about $1 a piece. So 80 batteries was $80 for an e-bike battery plus $50 for the battery management board. Because you don't get the battery management boards used. You really want those new. Those are very important. So anyway, so thank you very much for joining me. You can bring the dogs back up on stream here. I actually don't have the dogs with me today. They're at my parents' house. I was in New York yesterday, and when I got back late last night, about midnight daylight time, everybody was already asleep. So and the door was barred, so I wasn't really getting in without making a big ruckus. So I decided to let everybody sleep, and I would drive back today and pick up my dogs. Vienticus cautions me, don't do a lithium-ion car battery. See, the thing is, I know how to make a lithium-ion car battery. You can't just connect a lithium-ion battery to your car, at least not for very long. What you need is a battery management system that properly senses the voltage from the car's alternator and converts that into a proper current-limited battery charge. And then when discharge is necessary, also has some kind of current limiting on that as well. Usually enough to start the car, but not enough to blow up the batteries. So lithium batteries do have 500 charge cycles, but that's also a chemical thing. You can buy longer lasting lithium-ion batteries. Also, the battery management system can be programmed to use a narrower charge curve and not go from 4.2 down to 3 volts, but rather do something like 4.15 or 4.18. It's a car battery. We only need 12 volts, so even 4.1 volts would be fine, and then discharge down to, say, 3.6 or 3.7 would be fine. That's the vast majority of the curve, and you'll get way more than 500 charge cycles out of a battery that you're using at an 80% or less duty cycle. So I have a lot of experience with these batteries, and might actually release some charge circuitry of my own when I get done designing it someday. Nothing I'm ready to do right now. I'm still focusing on this channel, but that's one of my hobbies, is building batteries and e-bikes. So Francisco asks how Google beat Canada. You're just going to have to wait. The live stream is going to go private, and then the stories will be released throughout the week. Viennicus also has some concerns about engine heat, and yes, you would have to insulate it against engine heat, definitely. I don't see that as being a terrible problem. There are companies that make lithium-ion car batteries. It's not an impossible thing. It's just I'm talking about a DIY thing. So I do agree that caution is important. Which is why if I made something like that, it would definitely be in some kind of steel or explosive-proof box. I'm not going to take chances with real-life stuff or burning people in real life or anything like that. This would be something that I would do in a safe way. It's not that they derate in the cold. It's that the current you can over. Yeah, I guess the current capacity derates. So yes, you have to be careful that if you're using them below a certain temperature, that you don't overcurrent them for that temperature. But I'm not living in a place where this is going to be any sort of problem with temperature. The lowest we get down to is about 0, and that's not even sustained. So these are all things that I will explore before I build a battery. I'm just talking. And yes, I do. I subscribe to Big Clive. I learn a lot about stuff from him there. I've learned a lot from building my own batteries. And And definitely, I don't recommend anyone do anything like that at home without significant training. I have had engineering training, electrical engineering training, and again, lots of experience and research with these batteries. We do use LiPo batteries in vaporizers. We use them in RC cars and quadcopters because they can supply enough charge. And there's a lot of we use them in electric cars. So it's definitely not something like electric car has a lithium-ion battery in it. Yes, a lot of those are heated and cooled. They are also kept in heavy steel boxes so that if they ever exploded, that they wouldn't explode on you, that they would explode in some other. Yes, and airsoft guns, especially airsoft guns that come with nickel metal hydride batteries. You can basically swap out for the appropriate size lithium ion and get a lot better power and performance out of your airsoft gun. I am a total nerd, Ixie. Thank you for watching. Any other questions, Brandon?
There's a few.
I've gotten a lot of feedback already from people in chat who want to talk about lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
From Keith asks if anything came from Honest Mattress Reviews telling you about their Twitter message.
Yes, we're going to read through their appeal, and we're going to cover that as a story. I did not get a chance to cover that this morning. We did a different set of stories this week, and it's nothing to do with Honest Mattress Reviews or anything like that. Just timing. I have the appeal. I have the document they sent me and everything, and I will cover it within the next week, I think. Kate is very unhappy that the dogs aren't here.
Joshua Lincoln asks, has there ever been a ruling to decide who owns the individual packets of data that get sent over the internet?
I don't think that would be covered by one specific ruling. The way cases get brought are when someone's been injured or violated or something like that. It's not like you can walk down to your local courthouse and ask the judge to decide who owns the packets on the internet. So there would need to be a reason to challenge who owns the packets on the internet. And I'm pretty sure that the challenge is fairly well resolved, that you own your own data and that it's not... Here's the most relevant thing I can say is about copyright. Why is copyright not violated or something by transmitting packets over the internet? Well, it's because the standard for copyright infringement is different than just transmitting things over the internet for creating a copyright, and there are laws that protect those who transmit things from endpoint to endpoint, the providers that transmit things. So first, copyright is only created when your expression is fixed in a tangible medium. Those are the literal words. The fixation means it has to be fixed in a medium that can be transmitted and viewed in a meaningful way. Packets over the internet certainly contain what can be reconstructed into your tangible medium of expression, but they themselves are not the tangible medium of expression. They themselves are a transfer medium. And so I'm thinking the argument would mostly be, and there have been cases on this part, that because it's transient information that is being transferred and is not being transferred in a way that displays it in a meaningful way to someone, then that is not a copyright violation. And even if it were, if it is being transmitted by a service provider in accordance with the DMCA and other copyright law, then that service provider is immune to prosecution in the first place. So what does this have to do with net neutrality, that's a little bit different. What net neutrality says is that providers can't prioritize one kind of traffic over another without a legitimate technical reason. For example, cell phone traffic might be prioritized over Hulu videos, but that doesn't mean that NBC's videos are prioritized over Fox's videos. The lack of net neutrality that we are currently exploring with our FCC is in danger of removing that protection. The lack of net neutrality would mean not only could a service provider choose to prioritize some data over another in the original sense, that videos could be prioritized less than calls, could be prioritized less than, I don't know, emails or text messages or something, which is already somewhat possible. Not just practically possible, but legally possible. But without net neutrality protections, then your internet service provider, who only controls your end connection from you to the backbone, they would be able to say that NBC gets priority over ABC, or Fox gets priority over NBC, and when you go to fox.com, your internet connection works fine, but when you go to nbc.com, you don't get to connect to nbc.com unless you pay for a package that lets you connect to nbc.com. We haven't actually seen Comcast do this yet, but then again, we haven't had a lack of net neutrality rules yet. What we have seen done is this weird-ass backdooring of this crap, where AT&T, for example, will now let you stream DirecTV for free. No additional data charges. You still have to pay for DirecTV, like $10 a month or something with your AT&T connection. But the data isn't counted against your data connection. However, YouTube's still is, and NBC's still is, and ABC's still, and everybody else's still is. But if you watch through DirecTV, then you don't have to pay for the data. So that sort of prioritization is already what I consider to be a violation of net neutrality, because DirecTV is now getting an unfair advantage over YouTube, and I, as a customer, am getting like a benefit for something I'm not using, whereas the thing I am using, YouTube, is subject to a restriction. So that, I think, is already a violation. But then the lack of net neutrality is going on and saying that the service provider will be able to make further discriminations and prioritizations. It could be something like cell phone plans, where you only get access to certain websites for for certain dollar tiers, like cable TV channels, or it could be more like cell phones, and it could be based on data usage or something like that. I don't know. What I have seen is that a number of providers have come out and said that they're not going to change anything in response to a lack of net neutrality. My provider, RCN, has said that they will not change anything in response to net neutrality. Whether that's true, I don't know. I don't know that I can hold them to it if they lie to me. But Comcast has already gone to the FCC for approval on its lack of net neutrality plan, and to ask the FCC to confirm that they are not going to be enforcing net neutrality. They've already met with them. So we're going to be doing a video on this, and I'm going to be doing a call to action asking everyone to call in to the appropriate numbers and write to the appropriate email addresses and send the appropriate mail about the FCC and such very shortly here. Okay? So, and lastly, I also wanted to remember, because I covered this on the private stream, but I also wanted to show off what Bodhi sent in. One of my fans, Bodhi, has sent in these Halloween hats. They're wonderful, beautiful, hand crocheted. They fit perfectly. I have no idea how you figured out my head size, but here's a pumpkin, and that one's really cool. And we have a black cat with ears. I really like this one. I think I'm going to wear this one like during the winter. And then we have a candy corn, which is here. These fit perfectly, Bodhi. I have no idea how you got this so perfect.
That is amazing, actually.
And then a ghost with little frills on the bottom, like this Pac-Man ghosts. I'm afraid this one looks a little feminine for me. I might not be wearing this one too often, but it does. It is really cool. So thank you very much, Bodhi, for sending in the hats and the nice letter with pictures of your dogs and everything. I really appreciate that. That's really cool.
Are we doing a gaming stream today?
I will be doing a gaming stream, but I have to go pick up the dogs first. So I'm going to stop here, and I know that kills the hype. I know that kills like the initial influx of people, but preparing for the show and then doing the show and everything, I really need a break anyway. So I'm going to take an hour and go pick up my dogs and come back, and we'll do a live stream gaming session this afternoon on Twitch.
Sounds good.
Sound good? All right. So thank you, everyone, for joining me. As you all are aware, I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. I would like to thank all of my supporters for November. First off, as you heard, AVE is supporting the channel. He's supporting a video and sponsored a video on the Milwaukee Tool versus Snap-on patent case that Snap-on recently lost. I believe they said they're appealing. I'll have to check on that one. This month's $50 plus supporters are John Steele, Weston Loney, Nate Beck, Lydia Collinson, and Gavin Barnard. Thank you very, very much for your pledges and support. And the rest of the $5 plus supporters who wish to be named are listed in the description below and are scrolling in the background here on the panel behind me. Somewhat blurry. I think you can still make it out. I like to do the bokeh effect with the depth of field there. And there are a bunch of other supporters that are supporting at the $1, $2, or more dollar level, and simply I don't recognize the names broken out like that. And there's also people in there who are supporting at the $5 or $10 or $20 level and don't want their name listed. So thank you all for all that support. You really help make this whole thing possible. And the more support that we grow, the more and more I will be dedicating my life to making these videos for you. It's pretty much is my life right now, and I'm just looking forward to having the resources to make higher and higher quality productions, hire people to do research and form the proper nonprofit organization and get this thing recognized at a national level and all that. And we even have some people interested in helping us do that. I've been contacted by some people from the American Bar Association, a legit organization of lawyers who I don't know. I'm going to talk to our contact and see what they're interested in. It could just be a pat on the back, or it could be support for a larger endeavor. Anything in between. So I'm looking forward to the future with you guys. This is amazing. You're all so wonderful. Anything else, Brandon, before I take it out?
No, that sounds like everything.
All right. Thank you for joining me. I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney, and I'll see you in this week's videos. Have a great week.